everyone, I'm Brittany Jones-Cooper. Welcome back to Build. The film If Beale Street Could Talk has touched audiences, telling the emotional story of a young couple ready to start their lives together when their love is tested by a false accusation and a racially biased system rigged against them. Today, I'm sitting down with actor Colman Domingo, who plays Joseph, a father fighting to protect his child against all odds. Let's take a look.
Strumming my pain with his fingers.
You ready for this?
Singing my life with his words.
I've never been more ready for anything in my whole life.
Killing me softly with his
We are drinking to new life. Tish gonna have Fonny's baby.
I hope it's a boy.
We're gonna have a baby. I'll have you out of here before then.
You sure about that?
You're not by yourself.
These are our children, and we gotta set them free. Gotta hold our baby in my arms.
I'm with you. You trusted love this far. Trust it all the way.
Everyone, give it up for Colman Domingo.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm well. It's good to be back in New York, and I have a lot of friends here today, which is nice.
I love your friends. Also good to be back in New York. We're wearing black. It's very
You know, I keep it
distinctive.
real. I'm one of those LA people who live there now who wear black.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
they just know. Exactly.
I'm watching that trailer and I'm like, man, did they have to use Lauryn Hill for that? Like, it's such an emotional film, and it's one of those things where after you watch it, you're thinking about it for days, weeks, even months afterward.
I think it's getting into our souls. It's getting into the consciousness of America, and I think that's the point of like even using an iconic song like that written by Roberta Flack. But it's gonna harken all those memories and all those things that you're touching upon about, and it's just about love.
Exactly. It's about love, and you can feel it even though the subject matter is so heavy throughout the film. It always comes back to that love, which I think is what makes it durable.
You're so right, and that was such a conscious effort. That's also what the book is. It's the rage that we're feeling, and it's also the love. And how do we move forward with all the injustices in America? But to know that there's so much love wrapped around it. To know that like the Fonnies in America, someone loved them, and they came from love. They're just not someone who's caught up in the system, you know?
And it reminds you also that you don't know people's story.
Yeah.
You really don't. And knowing people's story is so important, which takes us to your character. Everything you just said very much describes him, and I think it embodies him. How would you describe Joseph?
Wow, I would describe Joseph as an ordinary man who does the extraordinary by having a platform of grace, of humanity, of humor. He's like these ordinary brothers that I know. He's like my brother and my stepfather. Ordinary men whose main goal is to make sure that they're great providers, that they're doing what they can with what they've been given or what agency they've had in their lives. Like my stepdad, who had a third-grade education, who came along and he raised 3 children that were not his own. He's one of my superheroes because he's those men. He made sure that, you know, I made a way out of no way. I went to college. You know, there was food on the table. You had sneakers. You did this thing. You know, I grew up in a very working class family, but I thought that I had it all. And so I think Joseph is a representation of that. He's these men that I admire, these blue-collar men who do the extraordinary by sending everyone else on their way. That's why the Sharons can go to Puerto Rico to do the work that she needs to do. That's why the Tishes in the world can go out there and I think he's a great platform for others to thrive.
Yeah. What I loved most about him was his vulnerability. Obviously, as a black man in the 70s, you already know the journey that he's likely been on, facing discrimination and having to fight for everything. And you see him with his family, and he is so open and soft and loving. And I feel like that representation you don't get to see. And I feel like you really embodied that character. So what was that important for you to bring that softness to him? Because you know probably that life hasn't been the easiest.
Absolutely. I think the man that Baldwin wrote as well has so many complexities. I love there's a story about how he wooed Sharon, how he just didn't let it go. He kept going. And that was a key for me to understand who he was. And also the fact that he's got so much good humor and the way he takes in complicated things like when he's approached with Tish's pregnancy. He doesn't respond in the way, the sort of trope that we usually see, black men responding in a hard way, in a harsh way, maybe throwing her out of the house. He's responding with so much love, and that's love that I understand very well. You know, even if even if he truly didn't understand it, he's like, I'm going to reach to understand because I love my child. And so I think Joseph, it's a very important depiction of black manhood these days that is in direct conflict with the way we're usually seeing that we're interpreted on film. We're always hard, we're always killers, we have no humanity. And then you have two black men sitting in a bar talking, but trying to raise each other up. One's trying to raise the other, saying, I love you, and I also love your son, and we're going to work it out. The whole time, as we understand, we're fighting for a child that's not our own. You know what I mean? And that's the love that we have in our communities. And that's the way that black men shoulder each other and are each other's brother's keeper. And I think that's something I know and I understand very well. But it's funny because I don't see it that often in film.
You don't. And I'm happy you brought that up. I was going to bring it up because there's obviously the romantic love story, but it is a family love story. And it is that brotherhood. You and Michael Beach, that scene where you're just trying to figure out what to do, how to pull together the resources, was so gut-wrenching because you just see these men who are they want to lay it all on the line, and they're doing it together.
And it's such an honest scene as well. I love the language that's happening in there, that we get to the soul of who these men are. And they're about to go out and do some slightly nefarious things, do something strange to get that change. But you understand that they're doing it with what agency they have. They know the system's not set up for them. But they know they have to take care of each other. And I love the conversation he says that I have with Michael Beach, where he says, have you ever had any money? So why are you worried about it now? So you just have to make a way out of no way. So let's get your stuff together, have your drink, and let's go. Yeah. Let's go all in because this is our families, and this is our responsibility. James Baldwin always talks about, especially in this one essay called Nothing Personal, he talks about the responsibility that we have to the other generations. And that's something that I know that I'm inspired by, that we all have to be responsible to one another, because we know that government, civics, things like that don't take care of us. So the first thing we have to do after we're in shock and awe about the way things are going in our country, we have to take care of each other. And James Baldwin has been questioning and asking those questions. And in particular, if Beale Street Could Talk, it's trying to bind each other with brotherhood and sisterhood. You see that scene with Regina King and Anjanou Ellis, where the guys are basically thrown out of the room while the women take care of business. And she's trying to talk to her as a sister. She holds her and she's like, "What are you doing? This is a child." So it's love. It's like what Shakespeare was always interested in. The bonds of sisterhood and brotherhood, he believes, are just as strong as, man-woman relationships,
And it's that vulnerability that allows us to have that brotherhood and sisterhood. And
Absolutely.
You don't see that portrayed a lot. Being able to cry
Tenderness.
and be tender with each other. You saw that with Fonnie and Daniel as well, when they're sitting at the table and he's telling his story and tears are filling his. You don't see that vulnerability.
No.
And it's so important for the community, I think, to know that it's okay and that you have to share that.
Yes, and I realized that after many talkbacks, the most common thing that I get in response are from black women. Yeah. And they talk about the scene where I hold my daughter. Mm-hmm. And they say that, and for whatever reason, it brings up tears and emotions because they haven't seen it. And they understand it, or they wish they had a father.
Or they haven't felt it.
Or they haven't felt it. And you realize the need that we have for these relationships, for this, and these representations, to know that they're there and that we're longing for them. Yeah. So I think that that's important. Those representations are also very important right now.
And that we're not beaten over the head with it. No. The way that it's done in this film is almost mundane. It's just a family sitting around a table. It's just normal.
It's kind of ordinary in that way.
It's very ordinary, right?
Yes. No one's doing anything, there's no superheroes or anything. They're coming in and listening to one another and talking and laughing, and that scene with both families meeting up, and it becomes this wild, scene that's spirited and sassy and wild. But it's full of love, and I feel it's filled with tenderness and grace in a way that I truly understand my family and our families. That I think that, the way things are usually set up, the way we're written, are very tropey. Right.
And in that scene specifically, there are so many things to unpack, from the different wardrobes to the hair, to the words, to the religion. You have to go back and watch that scene a couple times.
A few times.
To really get what these families are going through and why that conflict is there.
What I love about that scene, and I'm going to focus on that scene again, I think there's so many different kinds of black folks in one
That's what I'm
scene.
saying, yeah.
You know, usually we see the Huxtables or, you know, the Evans family.
Right.
Yeah, you know, and now we have them all together.
In one room.
And exactly. And then we have Auntie who's holding the Bible the whole time, you know, but and everyone's battling out ideology. You know, so it's saying again, it's like, yeah, it's smashing tropes that we're all alike and we all believe the same thing or we all respond the same way, you know, and like men like Joseph, who probably has been dealt a dirty deal in his life growing up, but he still has so much grace and humanity and love that we don't see that, you know, we just see, and I love that, you know, that the thing that I really love about this film is that we don't see people who are broken. Like we see people, they're fighting for each other's humanity and for each other's livelihood and love and grace in the world, you know?
But they're fighting because, like we said before, it all comes back to just that love and being connected. Speaking of, Regina King plays your wife in this movie. She was nominated today for an Oscar.
Yes. My darling wife, Regina King.
A very, very deserved Oscar nomination.
Yes, absolutely. And for Barry for adapted screenplay and also
yes.
for Nicholas Bertel for original score.
The score.
I'm so thrilled.
Let's talk about Regina because your scenes together feel very organic, and I want to know what was the process like getting to know her. Because again, that chemistry feels very real.
It was. I think it was the magic of Barry's casting that the moment I met Regina a few times, very in passing, and each time I saw her, I was very shy, and I go back to my 14-year-old self. I'm like, oh my God, that's she won't know me. I'm gonna just keep walking. But till we're sitting around a table, and you know, she looks at me, she says, "Hey, husband," and I say, "Hey, wife," and that was on from there. There was we had some discussions. But we didn't really talk about how we're going to do this. We fell into each other's arms, affectionate. There's some scenes that are not in the film that we're just like, we come in, she's, this one scene, she comes in, this is how comfortable we were. She's at the, kitchen counter doing something, and Joseph comes in, and first he comes in, grabs a beer, and then goes, what do? He feels up on his wife because nobody's around. He feels like his girls are out, so, but we were that comfortable with each other, and there was never any question on how we do this. There's actually one scene in the film that it started by a bit of improv. Like, what do you guys do before the Hunts come over? And when we're dancing, and then we hear Tiana, who plays one of our daughters, saying, "Y'all so nasty." That was all improv. That was us just dancing. I'm like, oh, we be listening to some music and dancing. We were just like, yeah, how we used to do it in the old days. Yeah, like this. And we're like, y'all know nothing about that. They're like, y'all so nasty. Stop that. But we started to own our characters in such a way that we understood what they would do. You know what I mean? And also, I think it was very important for us to show that we understood that that we were Tish and Fonnie. So we understand our kids in that way. And also, we wanted to show also what is Tish made of. She's made of all this tough, all this beautiful, extraordinary love. Parents who love her and love each other. And there's also no shame in the family, which is also a beautiful bond for all of them.
Which is where Tiana Paris comes in with the no shame. She, for me, her lines.
She had the one-liners. I mean, she gets the one-liner of the year award when she would just say, "You smell like a French," or something like that, and then she's or "Unbow your head, sister."
Yes.
Yeah, that told a lot about who Tish was and her family. How this, she's made of all of this. Of course, you can continue to love and go after Fonnie's justice because this is what you're made of. You're built of all this love. Get out there in the world.
Yeah, that was a pivotal moment for me in the movie when she said, "Lift your head," because you understand what Tish is about to have to deal with, and that she has that support and people that are going to continue to support her through it.
And that moment right there of true sisterhood. She says, "Unbow your head, sister." Her parents are right there, and she's like, "I got you." And lift. And we were like, yeah, you're right. Unbow your head. Have no shame in this house. And how extraordinary is that to see between sisters?
We had Barry here a couple weeks ago, and he said that he likes to create an energy where anything is possible on his sets. Did you feel that? Yes. You obviously have the script, but that you could really kind of open up. And
yes, it was the most freeing that I felt as an actor in a long time. I felt that there was, and I keep using the word grace because it's true. It was a very graceful process. It's almost to the point where I felt that after we wrapped, I almost, in a strange way, didn't remember what we did because it was that open and you weren't that conscious. You were just dancing with it and playing with it. It was in this organism that kept moving. And so there was no big, you don't remember any big camera moves or anything like that. If anything, he even Barry was so graceful that he put the cameras outside of the action. You know, usually as an actor, you have like you're looking over someone else and you're doing an overshot and the camera's like in your face, basically. No, he put the cameras outside of us and using long lens, so he was letting the magic happen between us. So he was like a fly on the wall with his camera and direction, and very easy. Colman, try a little bit like that, like this, and then go away. And suddenly you're doing, which allows for all these silences and all these moments and the things that crackle and pop that are just not, you know, already you were given some extraordinary language by James Baldwin, but you're able to really get into the cracks and crevices of it and bring a little bit of yourself.
Yeah. Speaking of Baldwin, he wrote this book in 1974.
Yeah.
And it very much is shedding light on mass incarceration of Black men. And here we are in 2019, and those numbers have just increased since then. So what is your relationship with Baldwin and his material and really his ability to pinpoint culturally very important topics and that nothing has really changed in 40 years?
I am, I think, a proud descendant of James Baldwin. You know, he lives in my soul, and I've always been. I would always go to James Baldwin's text whenever I was troubled with anything that was going on in America, trying to find out who I was, trying to find out about our consciousness, about how to love, you name it, because he interrogated it. And he interrogated it from living in this country, but also living outside of the country. I traveled to St. Paul de Vence earlier this year, where the only book that he wrote fully was If Beale Street Could Talk, actually. So, and I saw where he would write from, which is interesting because I think that it was, you know, you got to go outside of your country or go outside of the world to really interrogate it, to really have it. You can really form some very strong opinions about it because, like he said, because he loves it so much. I think that he said something like that. He has such a critical eye on America, and it's his right because he loves it so much. And I think that that's what I think we're all doing that now, even more so. I think it's important to be critical and to have a strong opinion about something because that's the only way we're going to have any breakthroughs. And I think that this is why work like, you know, If Beale Street Could Talk is even more relevant now because it really is pressing on the consciousness of America and on our, not only of America, but our souls. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think we're really like challenging each other. Let's get soul deep now. Yeah. We've already had some intellectual conversations. We're already rallying out in the streets and things like that. Now let's do some soul talking and let's be honest about it. How do we really feel?
And people are rediscovering his works, which I think is the most important thing to come from this film.
People are not only rediscovering, they're discovering, which is surprising to me that when people don't know who James Baldwin is. I'm like, you're saying you don't know who Shakespeare is or Homer.
Well, our schools don't really teach what they should. I didn't know about James Baldwin until maybe 5 years ago.
I didn't know about James Baldwin until I got to college, and then I was mad.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're mad. You're like, why was I reading a Scarlet Letter? Get out of here.
You're Lord of the Flies.
Yeah,
you know, I'm like,
good.
Right. If I read more like, you know, Go Tell It on the Mountain or Giovanni's Room, you know, I think I may be a little further along in my life.
You have to seek it out, which is unfortunate. But I think this is encouraging people to seak it out and know that it exists.
I tell people, like, if you love Black Panther, you love Get Out, see If Beale Street Could Talk, too. It's like, it's not, I don't want people to ever think it's just an art house film. Mm-hmm. It is very commercially reaching. It's like, yeah, these are superheroes. They just don't have on capes. Yeah.
When I look at your body of work, it does seem like you're very intentional with the projects you choose.
Yes.
So what is it that makes something jump out to you?
I've got to care deeply about it. We spend so much time away from our families and loved ones and friends. And so the rooms that you're in, the things that you're creating have to be essentially very important. Mm-hmm. I feel like, especially I think I'm about to turn 50 this year. And I know it's very important for me to make sure that every single thing that I do, whatever I do in my day and the people who are in my life, it's got to matter fully. I've got to love more. I've got to be more available. And it's just not for the work projects, but it's for life. But also that helps inform my work projects because everything, honestly, I can tell you this without anything on it. Every single thing that I do, I care about. Yeah. I made a decision, I think, a long time ago, before I could even afford to make a decision like that, where I wanted to do things that matter. Mm-hmm. And I say no a lot. Yeah. Because I think that also that values your work and your work ethic and what you bring to things is to also say no and to do things that really, where you feel like you're making a difference. Honestly, I feel like I know I can look at my body of work in film in particular and say, I know now what I'm trying to do. This is my work of activism. This is my work. I'm not a person who's out in the streets, you know, marching. I march by writing, by creating rooms and rooms that look like people like me. I think I guess I'm on the shoulders of people like Ralph Ellison, people who, or Nat King Cole. It's like, we can do it with art as well, which is also very subversive. And that's the way I do it. And so
I think
do what I
oftentimes
can.
art is what moves the dial.
It is. It
Or
absolutely.
grabs the most attention.
Which is why people try to defund the arts, because art, it's powerful. We change hearts and minds. That's why. And the more that we talk about that, the more that we'll make a difference, the more that we know. That's why it matters. Because they know, oh my gosh, if you get into a person's soul in a dark room and we're all together, shoulder to shoulder, sharing the same thing, crying over the same thing, we're going to make some changes. We see each other, and that's healthy. But, I think that there's a construct which tried to keep us separated because it's about power and money. We know what this country is made of, and we're fighting actively to put a Band-Aid on it.
To uplift Black voices and to tell these stories that have been buried.
Yeah.
I know you are working on a play about Nat King Cole.
I am. I have a new musical opening up, co-written by me and Patricia McGregor. It's starring Dule Hill, and it's at the Geffen Playhouse. It starts previews on February 5th, and it's a dark night of the soul. I'm basically deconstructing an American icon to, again, look into the soul of America. Yeah.
What were you most surprised to learn about him? Because I'm very much into his music, but I actually don't know a lot about the man.
I was very surprised to learn that Nat King Cole did have some rage. Because everyone, even his daughters, would say that he was always a man of grace. Anything that happened, people burning crosses on his lawn. Until you read an article in Ebony magazine in 1958. I had to do a lot of research because I got frustrated with them. As I was researching, I'm like, there's no way that this man can have that much grace. Until you find this article, and he said famously why his show was canceled in 1957 after being one of the top stars of his time, and he couldn't get a national sponsor because of the pull of the South. And he famously said, Madison Avenue is afraid of the dark. And he goes into it in such an intelligent way. He lays it out, he really lays it out, like why his show wasn't a success, but why it was important for it to last as long as he did and hemorrhage money, because he knew that it was for the next generation. He was always looking behind him and always looking ahead. You know what I mean? And that's what I think, that's a responsibility that I know that I have, that I'm looking behind me and I'm looking ahead. And everything that I do, I'm laying seeds for the next generation.
I'm going to clap for that. Let's go to the audience really quickly for some questions.
Thank you.
Because I could literally talk to you for another hour. So,
Okay.
who do we have first?
Hi, Colman. I want to say I love your work and I really appreciate your sense of style. And I wanted to know, before you worked on this project, did you think it was going to be as talked about as it has become? And is there a specific role that you haven't played that you would love to?
Oh, that's good questions. First of all, I love your style. You always have good rings.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's see. First, I'll go to. I think. There's a role that I'm trying to put together right now to do because I think it's important. It's about a civil rights leader that's not ever really talked about. I'll just say that. But he's a hero, and so I'm gearing up and putting the pieces together with some people to make that happen. And what was your first question? I went to the second because then I got caught up by your
Before you
rings.
worked on this, did you think it was going to be as talked about as it has been?
You know what? I knew it would be talked about because I knew that, first of all, immediately this is the follow-up to the director who directed Moonlight, and there's going to be a lot of eyes and attention on it. But what I actually loved the most is when we were filming up in Harlem, it felt as if he was just starting out again. Like, it's as if the Oscar didn't happen. It was not a wild budget. We were really just like, sometimes where the actors would sit around was just hanging out on couches together, all in the living room, wearing some brownstone that was about to be gutted, and we're all just hanging together, creating some art. So we were all just so focused on that we didn't really think about how it would be received. We just wanted to do the task at hand, to be honest, and I think that's what I do with everything. It's like, I'm just going to create this piece of art. I'll create in a basement. I'll create somewhere, a little theater in Pennsylvania, and just hope. I'm going to plant that. It's like planting seeds. We'll plant that seed, and then we'll see what happens. We'll put some water on it. We'll look at it. We'll talk to it, and then we'll see if it becomes a tree.
We have a question from Twitter. from Adamar Janae. She wants to know, question for Colman, in what ways does your approach to material change when you're acting, writing, or directing?
Which shifts. It shifts a little bit. It's always the same approach. I always approach everything as if I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm always a little terrified, and I think you have to be. I think you have to be because I feel like that you always want to feel a little bit like a kid and feel like you're doing it for the first time, and it's raw, and it's messy, and it's weird, and it could be wrong. And so I approach everything the same way. I'm usually, and this may surprise you, I'm usually a little terrified before I do anything. I always feel like, oh, okay, they're going to all find out that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I actually do know what I'm talking about, but I'm just such a nerd. Like, I'll research to death and I feel like I'm ready in every single way, but then you have to just let it fly. So I think I'm still, honestly, I feel like that I'm still doing the same thing that I was doing when I started out in, 1988, or just working in small theaters in San Francisco when I was producing for $500 of my own money. I feel like I'm still doing the same thing. It's just more on a larger scale, notable scale, with Regina King and stuff like that,
Much larger scale. But I get that desire to feel scrappy.
Yeah, you always want to feel
like
scrappy.
You're putting it like
you
that.
You don't want to feel like you got this.
No.
I think then it's time to move on. You need to feel like I'm about to mess things up and be run out of the country.
If you think you got it, you probably don't got it too. It's like you always got to have different viewpoints. So exactly. I think you're doing okay.
Yeah.
And last question.
What's going on, Colman?
How you doing?
Good in yourself. Congrats on such a rich film, something we need at this time, seeing ourselves on screen. I want to ask, Barry Jenkins, he seems like the type of director that raises the bar. So on set, how were you challenged by him? Did he have to push you in any way, any situations making the film?
Did Barry have to push us in any way? Again, I say no. He was, who's, I've worked with some directors who are, I'll lead this by saying this. I've worked with Spike Lee. Spike's like a basketball coach. He's like, Colman, you gonna do that? You gonna cry today? Because there was one scene where I had to bring up some tears. You got this, right? You are, yeah, I'm all right. I'm here. You go get some breakfast. I'm all right. I got it. All right, fine. So he's more of that guy. And you have Lee Daniels, who's gonna break you down a little bit, and just like the things he made. He's like, let's say he'll say to Lenny Kravitz, Lenny, this isn't Madison Square Garden. Bring it down. Or he'll just work off either Colman, this isn't the stage. Bring it down. Less. So everyone has their way, and I love that way, too, because Lee gets you to a place of pure honesty. That's what he wants. And then you have someone like Ava who will embrace her artist every morning and give you a hug and let you know this is the work we're doing, for civil rights, et cetera. And then you have someone like Barry who's very gentle, very graceful, sets the room up, and sort of backs off. He lets it happen. Comes in, dial things, lays it out, see how the scene is playing out, how you rehearsed it, make some adjustments, put some cameras on it, and he's letting it. I think he likes to be a fly on the wall, and the way he even directs, I feel like I watch him do this. I feel like there's a melody going on in his head, and then you see the score, you see the lush frames, and you're like, oh, that was in his body. And it's now come out on film. So I think he's that kind of director. So he didn't have to really push us anywhere. But also he's got a bunch of people who are willing, and I also have to give it up to one person in particular, Ingenue Ellis. We shot that scene, that family dynamic scene, over a course of 2 days. And Ingenue Ellis, I've never seen anything like it before, and I just want to give so much praise to this actress and my other comrades in that scene. But Ingenue maintained that level of intensity for 2 whole days. And I mean, not only on her coverage, on my coverage, on Tisha's coverage, on everybody, Michael Beach's coverage, she was that intense all the way through. That's a phenomenal actor. And that's what I'm saying. Barry set the room for you to bring everything that you have and the way that you play and the way that you go hard with character and telling a story and being present, that Barry laid out the foundation and you just stepped into it. So we were allowed to do, hopefully, I believe that many of us feel we've done some of our best work because of it.
And as a viewer, I can feel it. And having your insight into that scene
Thank you.
Makes it even more impactful and emotional. And I've been telling all of my friends that they need to go see it. So I hope you guys do take the time to go to the theaters and check it out if you haven't. If Beale Street Could Talk is in theaters now, give it up for Colman Domingo.
Thank you. Thank you.